Hello, everyone. Mr. McKinnon and I are here today to discuss what we think is a very serious issue. This is a response to what we've been seeing coming out of Mr. Poilievre in the last few days. Mr. Poilievre has had an opportunity now with at least 3 different news organizations, friendly news organizations, I would add, to lay out his plan. What his plans are, what he plans to do moving forward, and we have yet to see anything substantive. He's had long-form interviews with some very friendly news organizations, and we're not seeing anything come from him. Instead, what we're seeing from Mr. Poilievre is a throwback to 25 years ago, pining over having a political party. I think he phrased it the mind your own damn business political party of 25 years ago, something that, quite frankly, is concerning when we consider the fact that so many initiatives and so much progress that has been made over the last 25 years with respect to same-sex marriage, with respect to building on the social progressive agenda that we have in our country, just quite frankly, didn't exist back then. We see that as problematic. We think that Canadians genuinely need to reflect on this as an opportunity to see what Mr. Poilievre has to offer. Mr. McKinnon?
Bien, ce que nous déplorons, nous avons écouté M. Poilievre au cours des derniers jours dans des entrevues très, très longues, mais dans une forme réductrice. M. Poilievre a adopté un discours réducteur où il ne parle de rien. Quand je parle avec mes commettants, je leur dis, écoute attentivement ce que M. Poilievre dit et l'absence d'un plan pour les changements climatiques, l'absence d'un plan en matière de logement, l'absence d'un plan économique pour le Canada. Et, soit dit en passant, comme député de la capitale nationale, l'absence d'un plan pour notre fonction publique et pour le rôle du gouvernement du Canada dans la vie quotidienne des Canadiennes et des Canadiens. Donc, ce que nous avons vu, what we've seen in the last few days is Mr. Poilievre choose some very comfy, fuzzy little interview spaces where he can spew his right-wing stuff without really having any kind of aggressive questioning. We have not heard Mr. Poilievre be questioned on policy, on specifics, on how possibly, having spoken about housing for all these months, how he could possibly arrive with a plan that is less ambitious than ours, which does not project new housing starts like ours does, which does not act transparently in terms of the interest of communities and of Canadians. How he can get away with not talking about specifics on climate change. How he can talk about axing one of what is the world's most effective carbon limiting mechanisms, which is a price on pollution, and how he could get away with withdrawing climate incentive checks from Canadians that Canadians benefit from. So all of that being said, we are not going to sit here and listen to Mr. Poilievre's reductive talk without it being responded to, and make sure that Canadians are drawn, that we draw their attention to not only what he's saying, but what he is not saying. And what he is not saying is anything about a specific plan to move Canada forward.
What does it say about the fact that you're holding a press conference to respond to his year-end interviews? I mean, how far back on your heels are you that you feel the need to do that? We haven't seen the Conservatives respond to any of the Prime Ministers.
What it says is that we have confidently, for 4 months in this House, put forward plans, specific plans, detailed plans on everything that I just talked about.
And yet he's getting under your skin.
And Mr. Poilievre arrives with these tropes and these slogans and doesn't manage to get questioned at all aggressively about his specific plans to improve the lives of Canadians.
What's your issue here, that he did some friendly interviews?
I'm
just confused as to why we're here and why we're listening and doing this.
Mr. Poilievre has spent the last 3 days giving these fuzzy, comfy little interviews in safe spaces for him. That's all very nice for him. Soit dit en passant, aucun en français à date. On va donner la chance aux coureurs. Aucun en français. But Mr. Poilievre has spent the last 3 days giving these fuzzy, and what we thought was, oh, a long-form interview. An hour here, a half hour there. We're going to hear some plans. We're going to hear some specifics. But yet, Mr. Poilievre comes forward with the same tired tropes that Mr. Gerritsen and I listened to and all of you listened to every day for the last 4 months.
Why is he leading in every public opinion poll then? for almost more than almost a year
You know
now.
what Diefenbaker said, right? Polls are for dogs, and there's going to be an election at some point in the future. We're going to be very happy and very confident to put our plans and our specifics in front of Canadians and let Mr. Poilievre try and get away with these tropes and these tired tropes that he's involved
Vous avez réalisé que vous devez commencer à taper un peu plus fort sur M. Poilievre parce qu'on se rend compte, quoi, vous réalisez peut-être que ça fonctionne. Vous avez vu le dernier sondage d'Abacus. Pourquoi, soudainement, on vous voit sortir
Moi,
les
ce que
gants?
je dis aux gens de Gatineau, c'est écouter attentivement ce que M. Poilievre dit, puis écoute ce qu'il ne dit pas. Écoute son absence de plan en changement climatique. Écoute son absence de plan en logement. Écoute son absence de plan en termes de technologie d'avenir et d'emploi de l'avenir. Donc, nous voulons évidemment souligner le fait que M. Poilievre n'arrive pas avec des solutions. Et lorsque les Canadiens se regroupent autour de la table pour les fêtes, bien, j'espère qu'ils ne discutent pas trop de M. Poilievre, ça ferait une soirée plate, mais s'ils le font, mais qu'on souligne et qu'ils aient en tête que M. Poilievre, c'est l'absence de plan.
Avez-vous mis trop de temps à définir M. Poilievre? Parce que j'ai l'impression que vous êtes un peu en mode rattrapage pour que les gens comprennent de quoi il est question. Mais est-ce que vous êtes en retard? Est-ce que vous lui avez laissé trop de glace à M. Poilievre?
On est autour du mi-mandat. Nous nous sommes attardés à beaucoup d'enjeux. Beaucoup de progrès ont été réalisés ces dernières années. Et là, on peut envisager une nouvelle année où l'économie prend le poil de la bête, où on peut anticiper peut-être, j'ignore, je ne suis pas dans les affaires de prédiction, mais je pense qu'on peut envisager un ralentissement du coût de la vie qui monte. Donc, moi, je pense que maintenant, on se doit d'arrêter de souligner nos plans, d'amener à l'attention des Canadiens les spécifiques que nous proposons, et oui, de faire le contraste avec l'absence de plan de M. Poilievre.
But to Louis' point, are you sort of trying to unroll a new strategy in that the Liberals are trying something new or trying to fight back more against Poilievre? Like,
Listen,
explain the thinking behind this.
Listen, first and foremost, we're going to keep delivering for Canadians. That's what we've done. That's what we've demonstrated that we're going to continue to do. But it's also important for us to highlight and show Canadians what the alternative is, quite frankly. And we've given Mr. Poilievre now, or he's had 3 opportunities to lay out in the most friendliest forms possible over a 45-minute to an hour-long period what he will do. And the reality is that he's not saying much. He's just a lot of the same repeated talking points. It's time for Mr. Poilievre to start saying what he will do about the environment, how he will protect our environment, rather than just routinely attacking a plan that, quite frankly, is accepted throughout the world. It's time for Mr. Poilievre to start talking about what his plans actually are. We're not seeing any of that from him, and so we're here today to say, listen, we will we will continue to work hard for Canadians, but at the same time, we're going to continue to point out where Mr. Poilievre continues to misinform Canadians on what his plans are, because we know at the end of the day, Mr. Poilievre's approach is exactly like Donald Trump's approach from the United States. It's all about feeding in and feeding off of the emotions of people to try to get the better of them. Our job, one of our jobs, is going to be to point that out, and that's exactly what we're doing here today.
But isn't this what an election campaign is for? Like, pardon me, we're not in a campaign. That's typically when a leader will put out a platform. That's when they detail their policy.
I mean, you would have to ask yourself, isn't the way that Mr. Poilievre acts now and has always been acting what an election
He revealed his platform in 2013. He revealed it in the 2015 election campaign.
Pardon me?
Justin Trudeau became leader in 2013. Didn't reveal a platform then. He revealed it in the, election campaign.
But we were certainly talking about our values and what was important to us.
That's not quite true either.
And we paved the way for that election platform well in advance. But listen, it's about talking about what we stand for. Mr. Poilievre, if you actually listen to what he says, stands for nothing other than to try to take down the current Prime Minister. And all we're saying is, if you actually stop and listen, as we did, we listened to the 45-minute-long interviews, you actually end up hearing nothing. And, we find that concerning. We think that Canadians would find that concerning when they take the time to actually listen and hear that nothing is being said.
You're promoting these interviews?
Monsieur McKinnon, vous avez parlé d'un contraste. C'est quoi le contraste le plus payant pour vous, ou les contrastes les plus payants en vue de la prochaine élection?
Moi, je pense que lorsque les Canadiens vont regarder, dans ma vie quotidienne, qu'est-ce qui compte pour moi? Bien, évidemment, les garderies, évidemment, un progrès social quelconque, évidemment, un plan pour la lutte au changement climatique, évidemment, une croissance économique, évidemment, un plan fiscal. Donc, nous avons étalé tout ça, là, pendant les 4 derniers mois ici au Parlement de façon très, très transparente. M. Poilievre, ce qu'il n'a pas fait, il a fait tout sauf cela. Il a livré le même discours ici. Oui, on est très, très clair. Il veut s'attaquer à notre prix sur la pollution. Ça, c'est très clair. Mais ce qu'il ne dit pas, c'est quelles seront ses propositions en matière de changement climatique. There was a very revealing moment I found this past session, just at the beginning of the session, which is when we gathered in London, Ontario for our caucus meeting, and the Prime Minister announced a comprehensive plan to eliminate GST on home rentals. That very same day, Mr. Poilievre, Mr. Housing, remember, Mr. Housing came out with a very narrowly defined, narrow in scope GST rebate. We can actually project the number of rental units that will be built on the strength of our policy. When Mr. Poilievre was given a clean sheet of paper, he came out with a narrow little piece of policy that fundamentally would not get any rental units built in Canada.
Est-ce que vous allez être capable de remonter 15 à 20 points dans les sondages?
Moi, je pense qu'on va continuer sur le trajet que nous avons choisi. Nous allons continuer de communiquer avec les Canadiens par rapport à nos plans, mais nous allons continuer aussi, peut-être même, voire même accroître le rythme de contraste avec M. Poilievre et inviter aux Canadiennes et aux Canadiens de considérer ce qu'il dit et ce qu'il ne dit pas. Et pourquoi M. Poilievre ne répond pas aux questions? Pourquoi M. Poilievre ne se soumet pas à un questionnement réel sur ses plans d'avenir? Pourquoi M. Poilievre ne compte pas être transparent avec les Canadiens par rapport à sa vision pour le Canada?
On that note, can I just ask you, I mean, you referenced the caucus meeting. This summer was pretty dour for you guys. I think people were acknowledging that on the record. Are you trying to say something's changed, that you don't think it's looking as bad as it was 4 months ago?
I think what you saw, we ended this session with an enormous number of accomplishments in this parliamentary session. We enter the next session of Parliament as a very confident group. You saw a group of 158-ish members of Parliament stand up for 30 hours. When we were called to vote for 30 hours, you saw Liberals standing up for our vision of Canada. What you didn't see is that same level of commitment on the other side of the House.
I would like to add something to that. You said, has something changed? Yes, something's changed. Look at the Conservative Party of Canada. This is a party that used to support Ukraine. It's now a party that won't even vote in favor of a free trade agreement with Ukraine, won't vote to support elements of Operation Unifier that directly supports Ukraine. Has something changed? Absolutely. The Conservative Party of Canada has changed. It's changed dramatically just in the actions that we've seen in the last 4 months. This is why Mr. McKinnon and I think it's so important to keep, to make sure that Canadians are informed, to make sure that they have all of this information, because it's absolutely critical. It's about a new Conservative Party of Canada. It's about a Conservative Party of Canada that is more based like the MAGA alt-right Republicans that we see in the United States, like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene. That seems to be who they're heavily influenced by now.
Canadians are supporting.
Pardon me?
Then you're saying that's who Canadians are supporting?
No, what I'm saying is that Mr. Poilievre is trying to give you the impression that he's something that, quite frankly, he's not. Because when you actually listen to what they say in the House, when you see how they actually vote, you start to realize that, they are not the Conservative Party of Brian Mulroney. Brian Mulroney's Conservative Party dealt with acid rain. They dealt with fixing the ozone layer. Literally led the world. Literally led the world in that. They literally led the world in that regard. And now what you see is a Conservative Party of Canada where they can't even get half their membership to agree that climate change is real.
Well, why do you think their message is resonating?
Last question.
Why do I think their message is resonating? Well, I think that their message is resonating because of what I said earlier. Mr. Poilievre is playing off people's emotions, he's playing off people's fears, and he's trying to translate that into telling people that he will actually be there for them. But if you listen to what he's saying, which is the entire point of us coming to talk to you today, if you actually listen to what he said in these interviews leading up to today, he's said nothing about what he will actually do for people. He's only continued to reinforce and play into people's emotions, to play into people's fears in order to try to scare them away from something else. Thank you.
Thank you.